The situation in Gaza continues to be an absolute apocalypse, a Holocaust. Don't take my word for it. This is Ofair Kasif, who's an Israeli politician, one of the only ones, one of the lone voices, really, speaking about what's happening in Gaza.
He's a member of the Hadash party. We've had him on the show, actually, which is the far left party in Israel.
This is him speaking plainly and saying this publicly, which, as we discussed with him when he was on the show, he puts a target on his back like this within a deeply fascistic society to be one of the few people in power saying this kind of thing. But it's important that he is, especially because in Gaza, over the past 24 hours, at least 10 Palestinians have died from starvation, including 2 children. And Gaza City in the north is being there. They've been just bombing rubble at this point. They've destroyed every part of like sustainable life in Gaza. By design, the only way that folks are able to eat is if food comes across, and we know that Israel is blocking an overwhelming majority of the food. So Palestinians can't grow their own food. Everything's dust and rubble and destroyed. And they are being starved to death by Israel controlling the entire border of the Gaza Strip, essentially, and not allowing aid in. I mean, Egypt's complicit too. But here is Ofair Kasif speaking plainly that this is a Holocaust. We can no longer use sugar-coated terms. There is no war in Gaza. There is a Holocaust in Gaza. Israel is facilitating a Holocaust, Gaza extermination, concentration camps, weaponized starvation, genocide, according to the most basic and accepted definition of the word. Anyone who doesn't raise his voice and oppose with all his strength the Israeli government and the IDF is complicit in this crime. A Holocaust is taking place in Gaza right now, led by the government and with approval from the generals. Refuse to participate in this genocide. We must rise up against this government, not with violence, but a peaceful uprising, with strikes, protests, blocking roads, with every possible democratic avenue. This government is exterminating a people and facilitating fascism, creating a fascist regime also within Israel. Those that refuse to oppose this government will not only be complicit in its criminal actions, but also its next target. And there have been, thankfully, protests on the streets of Tel Aviv. I don't want to overstate these, though, because when you look at public opinion within Israel, that is not what you're going to see in an urban center like Tel Aviv. And largely the protests are centered around the hostages, where, okay, many of the protesters say we need a ceasefire so that we can get the hostages back and then return to the genocide. That's a common liberal opinion within Israel.
I mean, members of Hadash regularly are targeted for attack, and he's working within the system and are very, a system that's gone horribly, horribly wrong. And Ofair is an extremely brave voice within it, and I'm really proud that we had him on the show. The truth is that we're into the point like America's were in Vietnam, where this is wrong. It's an atrocity that we're committing every single day for years. And the point needs to be even more direct types of sabotage, frankly. Whether it's like gumming up the works to like from within. I mean, these are extreme acts of bravery that you can't really no one's going to hear a podcast and be moved to, but it's going to take things like sabotaging the equipment or going at generals or something like that, like fragging, for instance. Like this is where we are. Yep. With the IDF and Israeli society, and the settlers are their own thing too, even more aggressive. And
I want to show footage of that in just a second, but just to underscore Matt's point and not to overstate the significance of these protests in Israel, but also to encourage them and to say that, yes, more direct action is taken. And really, this is the responsibility of Western governments to cut off aid and sanction Israel. And I mean, in my ideal world, the United States military would go into Gaza and make sure that the Palestinians were safe from the IDF and fight them if need be. Obviously, that is not going to happen.
I mean, that's what needs to happen.
But Western governments, because under Donald Trump, that's not what it's going to obviously happen.
There just needs to be all just needs to happen is stop backing up Israel and stop letting it have such an overwhelming force against everybody else who wants to do something about it, right? If we weren't constantly rearming Iron Dome, they would have to be more disciplined. They're not, and look what happened with Iran. They get hit in one hard way, and now all of a sudden they're ready to meet a ceasefire. They only respond to force. There's a book called this, Nick Thrall, that's the only language you understand.
Well, they don't want to advertise how actually devastating there's been a real cover-up of the impact of those Iranian strikes because Israel is obsessed with its deterrence capacity, and this shows that they actually are vulnerable in many ways.
And it's good to know that. And that vulnerability, we shouldn't be trying to protect them from it.
Exactly.
Because that's why you've seen tens and tens and tens to hundreds of thousands of people be slaughtered in a Holocaust.
And back just briefly to the protests on public sentiment there. I mean, I have this article saved on my desktop just to continuously refer to it because back in June there was a survey of Israelis, and this is this is overall Israelis here, but the 64% believe that Israel's local media's reporting on Gaza has been balanced and there's no need to present a broader picture regarding the situation of Gaza's civilians. Another question in the poll said was asking Israelis to what extent respondents agree with the statement that, quote, there are no innocent people in Gaza. 64% agreed with it to a large extent, meaning that's a unequivocal. Sometimes you'll have somewhat agree in polls. This is completely agree. When it comes to Israelis' views on foreign media outlets, CNN and the BBC they ask about, 69% of respondents said that CNN and the BBC are biased in favor of the Palestinians in Gaza. Yeah. So we have a society that needs to be pressured and forced to change and stand down from the outside. Because over in the West Bank, the crisis is escalating also at a rapid pace. We've spoken at length about this new green lighting of the E1 settlement plan, which segments and puts a settlement in between occupied East Jerusalem, which Israel has been illegally occupying and is Palestinian land since 1967, and a newer settlement that has cropped up and makes it so that it's very difficult to connect the West Bank that still has Palestinians in it, although they're changing that as well, to East Jerusalem because there's a bunch of settlers in between. And as that project goes forward, the Israeli government is handing out handguns to settlers and encouraging them to do violence. The man that shot and killed one of the Palestinians who worked on the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land was released immediately by an Israeli judge.
Our Congress takes votes, and one of the votes recently was like for specifically assault rifles, and that's where this stuff is going to ultimately.
Here is a video of a Israeli settler in the West Bank and a Palestinian woman, and she basically stands her ground as these settlers raid her land.
يلا أخوها يلا أخوها. I saw a subtitled version of this where she said, "I'm not afraid," right before she spit in his face.
Good for her. I mean, these are teenage kids, it looks like. The level of intensity in their eyes, you're looking into the darkest corners of humanity. I see some of these interviews with IDF people, and there's nothing so cut off from one's humanity that you can justify this kind of thing. And the bipartisan nature of this is really important to underscore. We'll get into this more in the second half of the show, but I just wanted to read this one excerpt, if we could pull it up, from Isaac Chotiner of The New Yorker, who does these incredible interviews that I don't know why anyone agrees to, because he gets the better of them every single time.
Hey, you know who came out well in it is Bhaskar Sankara.
the lone survivor. So this one excerpt is really making the rounds, the part about children. Chotiner interviewed Jack Lew, Biden's ambassador to Israel, and this part was just stunning when they're talking about the children that were killed. His answer to this question previously here, what on earth happened. So when you would call in the middle of the night, basically talk about the Israeli government and ask them what on earth happened, what was usually the answer? The general pattern was that in the moment stories were inaccurate, and that the Israeli military and government establishment were not in a position to fully explain yet.
Please.
We could almost never get answers that explained what happened before the story was fully framed in international media. And then when the facts were fully developed, it turned out that the casualties were much lower, the number of civilians was much lower, and in many cases the children were children of Hamas fighters, not children taking cover in places. Chotiner. Sorry, what did you just say? In many cases, the original number of casualties. Chotiner. No, I mean the thing about who the children were. Lew. They were often the children of the fighters themselves. Chotiner. And therefore, what follows from that? Lew. What follows is that whether or not it was a legitimate military target flows from the population that's there. Chotiner. Hold on, Mr. Secretary. That's not in fact correct, right? Whether it's a legitimate target has to do with all kinds of things like proportionality. It doesn't matter if the kids are the kids of... Lew interjects. If you're in a command and control center, that's different than if it's a school that's emptied out and innocent civilians are taking shelter there. If you're the commander of a Hamas unit and you bring your family to a military site, that's different. I'm not saying everything fits into that, and I'm not saying it's not a tragedy. Chotiner. It may shine a very poor light on Hamas, but who the kids are does not make a difference in terms of international law. Lew, it is not the simple question that it originally appears to be when the initial report makes it sound like the target was just an empty school that families took cover in. In some cases, I'm not aware of the full explanations, because when I left, we were still asking questions to get more detail and saying to them that they have to be able to explain these things. And I'm not going to say that none of them fall outside the bounds of things, where there should be disciplinary action against them, blah, 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 blah. But basically admitting that they're okay with targeting children in what they deem are Hamas command and control centers. The whole area is 141 square miles, and prior to the genocide, where, despite what Lew says, we know that hundreds of thousands are dead. We haven't been able to count. The numbers we have are just the folks that are either came to the hospital and died. We spoke to Dr. Tarek Loubani about this, so they were able to verify their identity, or they were able to do so in some other way. But there are hundreds of thousands of people unaccounted for in this very, very small piece of land, presumed dead under rubble. Hundreds of it's major undercounts by factors over and over again. And there's going to be children everywhere because they're being held in an open-air concentration camp that you're carpet bombing.
This is, I know we need to get to our guest quick.
Yeah.
Abdul Rahman Anwar al-Awlaki, a 16-year-old born in Denver, Colorado, was killed in a drone strike in 2011 that the Obama in particular signed off on. At first, the United States government said, well, we didn't know that the 16-year-old was there, the 16-year-old U.S. citizen, again, killed in a drone strike. But then Robert Gibbs, White House press secretary, said, "I would suggest that you should have a far more responsible father." His father was Anwar al-Awlaki. I would suggest you have a far more responsible father if they are truly concerned about the well-meaning of their children. I don't think becoming an Al-Qaeda jihadist terrorist is the best way to go about doing your business. They had no evidence that this son was becoming that. But, you know, the people that were upset about Obama's drone war, this is where we end up. We end up making excuses for a genocide that the Israelis are doing because, look, there's kids of terrorists. Terrorists.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.